All right, let's talk about Phuket. For many of our listeners, I think the idea of property investment there, well, it isn't just about the amazing scenery, is it? It's about smart growth.
Absolutely. Strategic investment.
But then you see that stunning villa or maybe a condo, and it only exists on paper, on blueprints. That's where the real questions pop up.
Yeah, definitely.
So today we're doing a deep dive into exactly that. Buying off-plan property in Phuket. Is it, a really high risk or could it be a high reward?
It's the core question, really.
And our guide for this is a fantastic article, really detailed, called Phuket Off-Plan, High Risk or High Reward. It's from Ocean Worldwide.
That's right. And Ocean Worldwide, well, they're a luxury real estate agency. They've been based right there in Phuket since, 2004?
Yeah, nearly 2 decades.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So they know the market inside out. Their director, Sandra O'Neill, she's apparently helped literally thousands of families, investors too, navigating this specific market. They really focus on that high-end luxury residential stuff in Phuket and also Koh Samui.
Impressive track record.
It is. So our mission today really is to unpack all the complexities around buying off-plan there. We want to help you understand the upsides, the potential downsides too, obviously, and maybe most importantly, how you could approach it smartly.
Get the full picture.
Yeah, give you a clear, sort of actionable picture. Everything from those tempting initial savings right through to some, well, potential headaches you might face down the line.
Okay, so for anyone listening who's maybe new to this term, off-plan, it can sound a bit vague, can it? Buying a dream on paper, essentially.
It can, yeah.
How common is this, actually, in a place like Phuket where the market's buzzing? And what's the basic appeal? Why take that, leap of faith?
It's surprisingly common, actually.
Yeah.
Off-plan just means you're buying a property. Could be a condo, could be a villa before it's built, or maybe while it's just starting.
So you're looking at plans, drawings.
Exactly. Architectural plans, maybe those glossy artist impressions, sometimes even quite fancy 3D walkthroughs now.
Okay.
And in a market like Phuket, especially for these luxury developments, it's not unheard of for whole projects to sell out when it's literally just a plot of land.
Wow. Really?
Yeah. The main appeal for buyers, it usually comes down to two things. One, the chance to save quite a bit of money. And two, getting your pick of the best units early. Snagging that prime spot.
Right. And thinking about the developers, it seems like a pretty smart move for them, too. Why are they often so keen to push these off-plan sales?
Oh, it's hugely beneficial for them. It's kind of a win-win, you see. Selling off-plan, it secures vital funding right at the start.
Cash flow.
Exactly. That early money helps their cash flow, means they rely less on expensive bank loans, and it can actually speed up construction. Plus, it shows them there's real market demand, which, de-risks the whole project a bit.
Makes sense.
And yeah, sometimes it helps them cover costs like those guaranteed rental returns they might offer, or just, boost their profits.
Okay, talking about attracting buyers, this is where it gets really tempting, doesn't it? Those sweet early bird incentives, it feels like more than just a discount sometimes.
It really does. They structure them cleverly.
Like they're letting you basically design your dream place, but at a lower cost.
Yeah.
It makes that initial risk feel, well, less risky and more like a custom opportunity. What kind of things are we talking about?
They really try to make them appealing. So typically you'll see pretty decent price discounts off the list price. That's often the biggest, most obvious draw.
The headline offer.
Right. But then they might throw in things like free upgrades, maybe higher quality kitchen appliances, nicer bathroom fixtures, that kind of thing. Gives it a premium touch without you paying extra.
That's nice.
And some even include full furniture packages, which, if you're buying from overseas, that's a massive, plus saves time, money, hassle.
Huge convenience, yeah.
So the insight there is, it's not just the raw discount. It's the feeling you're getting something special, something tailored, along with those real financial perks.
Okay, so we've mentioned the price perks, but let's dig into how these early investments can pay off long term. What's the biggest financial appeal beyond just saving money up front?
Well, probably the biggest one is the potential for significant capital appreciation. You're effectively buying it, let's call it a wholesale price.
Okay, like buying direct from the factory.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
Imagine you invest in a car model before it's even fully designed and built. You get a better price. Then, as it gets built, gets rave reviews, hits the showrooms, its retail value goes up.
Right.
That increase in value, just because the property is now finished, tangible, and in a desirable place like Phuket, that's your capital appreciation. You're hoping its value grows quite a bit by the time you actually get the keys. Makes those early savings look even better.
And it's not just about the bottom line, is it? It's also about getting first dibs, that exclusivity. Getting in early means you pick the best spots. What does that actually mean for a buyer?
It means getting the cream of the crop, really. You get first choice on units with the best views, higher floors, maybe direct sea views, which everyone wants.
The $1 million view.
Exactly. Or maybe the best layouts, or the ones closest to the pool, the gym, or right near the beach access. Getting hold of these premium units early, it definitely makes the property more appealing for you to live in, but crucially, it boosts its resale value later on.
Okay, so beyond the initial price and picking the unit, you mentioned the payment structure itself can be an advantage. How does that usually work with off-plan?
Yeah, that's another big plus. It's usually a staggered payment structure. So instead of needing one huge chunk of cash right away,
Which can be tough.
which can be very tough, yeah, you typically pay in stages, often linked to construction progress. So maybe a small reservation deposit first, then a bigger payment a month or two later when contracts are signed, then more payments as, say, the foundations go in, the main structure goes up, the roof goes on.
Spread out over time.
Exactly. It can stretch over, say, 12, maybe 24 months, sometimes longer depending on the build. Makes the financing feel much more manageable than finding one big lump sum. Smooths out your cash flow.
And then there's this thing developers sometimes offer, guaranteed rental returns. Sounds amazing, a guaranteed income stream. But is there a catch?
It does sound amazing, and it's definitely a powerful marketing tool. But yeah, you absolutely have to read the fine print.
Always the fine print.
Always.
Yeah.
While it gives you that sense of security, sometimes those guaranteed returns are kind of baked into the initial price you pay. So when you do the maths, it might not be quite as generous as it first looks.
Ah, okay.
Also, something else to look for is potential for freehold improvements. Sometimes developers include higher spec fixtures, maybe smart home tech, or even landscaping upgrades that become part of your freehold property. That directly bumps up its long-term value.
So tangible upgrades.
Tangible upgrades that add real value. And again, with any of these offers, guarantees, incentives, you really need proper advice to understand the true value proposition. Don't just take the headline figure.
Got it. And it's not just financial, is it?
Yeah.
One of the really exciting parts of off-plan must be the customization, making it your own. It's more than just picking paint colors, right?
Oh, much more. It's about really tailoring it. You might get to choose specific bathroom tiles or the exact kitchen appliances you want fit your style.
Nice.
Many developers also offer different interior design packages, so you could pick a whole coordinated look, maybe modern minimalist or something more traditional Thai covering furniture, lighting, color schemes.
Takes the guesswork out.
It can, yeah. And sometimes, especially with villas, you might even be able to tweak the layout a bit. Maybe combine two smaller units or shift a wall here or there, change doors or windows.
Really make it bespoke.
You can potentially create something quite unique. Just got to be careful, though.
Well,
You need to consider the costs of those changes. Make sure they're allowed under building regs, and also think about resale. A really unusual layout might not appeal to everyone later.
good point. Okay, so we've painted a pretty rosy picture with the potential rewards, but let's face it, buying something that doesn't exist yet, it carries risks. Time to look at the other side of the coin. The article mentions the big one, developer mismanagement, or, worse, bankruptcy. That's the real nightmare, isn't it?
It absolutely is.
Yeah.
That's the biggest fear for any off-plan buyer. You've put down maybe a large chunk of your money, and then the developer either goes bust or just, messes up the project management badly.
And you're left with.
You could be left with an unfinished building site, your money stuck, maybe lost, plus endless stress, uncertainty, potentially long and expensive legal fights. Yeah, it's a nightmare scenario. It's the #1 risk, no doubt.
Okay, scary stuff. But even if the developer doesn't go bust, delays seem almost inevitable in construction. For someone buying from overseas, what's the real impact if things drag on, apart from just waiting? Can it mess up your plans?
Oh, definitely. Delays are super common. Big construction projects. Things happen. What looked like an 18-month build on paper can easily drift into 2 years, 3 years, sometimes more.
Wow.
And for an investor, that really throws a spanner in the works. If you were banking on rental income starting by a certain date, well, that's gone. If you plan to move in yourself, your whole life plan gets disrupted.
Yeah.
It's incredibly frustrating. You absolutely have to build in a buffer for delays. Expect them, almost.
Right, assume it won't be exactly on time.
Pretty much.
So let's say you navigate those risks, the developer stays solvent, the project eventually finishes. There's still the quality, right? What if the finished product just isn't? Well, good.
Yeah, that's another very real risk. Just because it gets finished doesn't mean it's finished well. You could end up with shoddy workmanship, cheap materials substituted for what was promised,
Yeah.
maybe hidden structural problems.
Things you wouldn't spot immediately.
Exactly. Things that can really hit the property's value later or just make living there unpleasant. The article strongly recommends getting an independent property inspection, a snagging list, done as soon as it's completed, before you make that final payment, ideally.
Essential step then.
Crucial. It helps you identify any issues that the developer needs to fix. It protects you.
Okay, so these risks are significant. Developer issues, delays, quality. How do smart investors actually try to avoid these traps? Where do you even start with checking out a developer?
Right, so due diligence is absolutely critical here. And the first step is scrutinizing the developer themselves. Don't just look at the glossy marketing stuff.
Fed deeper.
You have to dig deeper. Check their track record. Have they actually finished similar projects before? Were they on time? Were buyers happy with the quality? Look for independent reviews online, testimonials, but be wary of ones that seem too perfect.
Good point.
And crucially, verify they have all the proper licenses and permits for this specific project. Ask them for proof. If a developer seems hesitant or vague about any of this, that's a big red flag. Walk away.
Makes sense. And it's not just the developer, is it? The land itself needs checking. How do you make sure the legal side is solid?
You're absolutely right. You have to verify the land title and the whole legal structure. It's vital to confirm the land title is clean and clear. That means no existing mortgages, no debt secured against it, no ongoing legal disputes about ownership.
Complicated stuff.
It can be, especially in a foreign country. You also need to understand the legal setup. Is it freehold, where you own the land and building outright? Or is it leasehold, where you're basically leasing the land for a very long time, maybe 30 years plus renewals? They have different implications.
So you need a lawyer.
Definitely. The article hammers this home. Get a reputable lawyer who specializes in Phuket property law. They'll review all the documents, check the titles, and this is key, explain it all to you in plain English so you understand exactly what you're signing. Don't sign anything until you do.
And that brings us to the contract itself. The sales and purchase agreement, the SPA, that's the legally binding document. What are the absolute must-check items in there?
Okay, the SPA is everything. You need to treat it like gospel. Check the payment schedule meticulously. Does it clearly link payments to specific, verifiable construction milestones?
Like foundation complete, roof on schedule.
Not just dates. Verify the promised completion date. And crucially, what happens if the developer misses that date? Are there penalty clauses that protect you, the buyer? What are they? How are disputes handled? Is there an arbitration clause?
Things you hope you don't need, but
You absolutely need them in there, just in case. And if you're not happy with any clause, try to negotiate it before you sign. Because once your signature is on that paper, you are legally bound. Again, lawyer review before signing is non-negotiable.
it sounds like getting professional help is unavoidable, really. Buying off plan overseas, like in Phuket, it's complex. How exactly do these consultants and lawyers act as your sort of boots on the ground? What's the real value?
They are absolutely indispensable, I'd say. Hiring good consultants, people who know the local Phuket market, they really are your eyes and ears. They can give you unbiased market analysis, proper checks on the developer's reputation beyond what you can find online, help you negotiate the price, and understand all the local rules and regulations.
What sort of cost are we talking?
The article gives a rough idea, maybe £1,000 to £5,000 for a consultant. But the insights they provide, especially from an agency with deep local roots like Ocean Worldwide, for example, that can be invaluable. They see things you just can't from thousands of miles away.
Right. And the lawyers, we've mentioned them, but why is that specific legal expertise so vital?
Because property law is complex anyway, right? Then you add the layer of it being a different country's legal system. It gets really tricky. A solicitor who specializes in Phuket property law knows the specific pitfalls, the local nuances. They'll check the contracts line by line, verify those land titles properly, make sure your interests are protected according to Thai law.
Peace of mind, basically.
Huge peace of mind. The article estimates legal costs might be around £1,500 to £3,000. Yes, it's an upfront cost, but think of it as insurance. It can save you enormous amounts of money and stress later if things go wrong. Professional guidance isn't an expense here. It's a crucial investment in making a safe, informed decision.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Okay, let's shift gears a bit and look at the bigger picture market dynamics, the long-term view for off-plan in Phuket. Apart from that initial discount, how does a property's value typically change as it goes from a plan to a finished building?
Well, there are a couple of factors. Just generally, over time, things like building materials and labor costs tend to go up because of inflation that naturally pushes property prices higher.
So even without doing anything, it costs more to build later.
Exactly. So that general uplift, combined with the discount you got for buying early and the capital growth we mentioned as the project gets built and de-risked, well, it can lead to pretty significant returns on paper by the time it's finished. That's why investors often like off-plan. You're trying to capture that pre-construction gain.
And this approach seems particularly attractive when the market is already hot, doesn't it? Why is off-plan compelling in a place like Phuket, where demand might be high and supply tight?
In a hot market, yeah, prices are generally rising because lots of people want to buy and there aren't enough properties. Buying off-plan lets you lock in a price today for a property that will be delivered in, say, 2 years. You're hoping the market continues to rise during that time so you benefit from those increases.
Getting ahead of the curve.
Kinda, yeah. You're making a bet on the future market. Of course, markets can cool down too, so it's not risk-free. But in a strong upward trend like Phuket has often seen, it's an appealing strategy.
Looking even further out then, once the building's done, keys handed over. What typically happens with prices then, and what about renting it out in a tourist hotspot like Phuket?
You often see another price bump once a development is fully completed. Why? Because all that construction risk is gone. It's brand new, shiny, appealing. Plus, general market inflation continues. Historically, good projects in prime Phuket locations have seen decent price appreciation after completion.
And rental potential.
That's often a huge driver for buyers. Phuket is, a world-famous tourist destination. So the demand for rentals, both short-term holiday lets and longer-term stays, can be very strong.
Location matters most, I guess.
Hugely. Proximity to the popular beaches, restaurants, attractions, that's key for rentals. Good property management is also essential if you're not there yourself. But yeah, do your own research on rental yields. Check out comparable properties. Look at occupancy rates. Don't just take the developer's rosy projections as guaranteed.
Good advice. And finally, thinking really long-term, resale value. How does buying off-plan potentially set you up better when it eventually comes time to sell?
Well, thinking about resale right from the start is crucial. Your eventual selling price depends on loads of things. The market conditions then, the property's condition, what similar places are selling for. But the article makes an interesting point. Sometimes properties in Phuket are initially sold, maybe later in the development cycle or once completed, at prices that are actually higher than what they might immediately resell for.
Really?
It can happen in hyped markets. So getting in early with that off-plan discount gives you more headroom. You've locked in a lower base price, potentially giving you a bigger profit margin or more flexibility when you eventually sell, compared to someone who bought later at a peak price.
Interesting. So if we boil it down, comparing off-plan versus buying something already built, it's that core trade-off again, isn't it?
Absolutely. It really comes down to higher risk versus potentially higher reward. Off-plan, you've got the risk of the unknown, the finished quality, the developer's reliability. You're buying a vision.
Whereas a completed property.
Well, it's right there. You can see it, touch it, inspect it. No construction risk. But generally, you'll pay more for that certainty. And the potential for really big capital growth might be lower than if you got in early on the right off-plan project. You trade potential upside for immediate certainty.
That said, new builds generally, whether off-plan or just finished, they do have a certain appeal, don't they? What makes them attractive, especially to renters?
Yeah, new builds definitely have advantages. Modern designs, the latest amenities, everything's fresh and clean. Plus, you often get warranties on fixtures and fittings, which means fewer repair headaches early on.
Less
Exactly. Renters often like that modern feel, fewer problems. That can mean higher rental income and less time sitting empty.
And the article specifically notes, off-plan condos are often seen as particularly good for capital appreciation compared to older, perhaps dated condos that might need a lot of work.
But older, established properties, they have their points too, right? Maybe a proven track record, existing community, prime locations where you can't build new anymore. How do they stack up?
They definitely do have advantages. You know what you're getting. You might have established management, maybe lower initial purchase prices in some cases. But as you say, they might need significant renovation to compete with newer stock. And maybe less potential for that sharp price increase.
So it's vision versus reality, almost.
In a way, off-plan is based on plans and renderings, though those renderings are incredibly realistic these days.
Yeah.
Established is based on, well, walking through the actual door. The best choice really boils down to your personal situation, what you're aiming for with the investment, and honestly, how much risk you're comfortable taking on. So, wrapping this all up, buying off-plan in Phuket. It's clearly not a straightforward, yes or no, is it?
Not at all. Far from it.
We've seen there's some really compelling advantages, the potential savings, getting the best units, that customization aspect, but the risks are real too. Developer problems, delays, quality control.
Definitely need to weigh both sides carefully.
So the big takeaway seems to be do your homework
Hmm.
meticulously. Check everything, double check it, and as we've stressed, get good independent advice.
That's the absolute key. Being smart, being informed. It doesn't guarantee success, but it massively shifts the odds in your favor.
Reduces the gamble element.
Exactly. And maybe a final thought. The skills we've talked about today, that rigorous checking, understanding risk versus reward, knowing when you need an expert's help, these aren't just for buying property in Phuket.
Broader application.
Totally. These are fundamental skills for making any big decision or for tackling any complex subject you want to understand properly. So hopefully this deep dive hasn't just shed light on Phuket property, but maybe also helps you approach other complex things with that same critical, informed mindset. It's all part of being the learner, right? Investigating things thoroughly.